Good morning and welcome back to Football League World TV. It's the start of another week, which means it can be only time for the weekend review. I'm your host, George Dagless. Joining me this Monday morning are Ben Wignall and Marcus Ally. Ben, how are you?
Very well. Took a trip to Birmingham at the weekend for a thrilling 0-0 draw between Birmingham and PNE. Hopefully I see a bit better tomorrow night when we play Stoke. But lots to talk about from this weekend from all three leagues.
Yeah, hopefully you've calmed down from that adrenaline-fueled 0-0 at St Andrews. Marcus, how you getting on?
Yeah, very well. Thanks, George. Bit of a therapeutic Monday morning activity, I think, looking back before we look forward. Yeah, lots to talk about.
Certainly is. If you're watching on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, do get in touch with your thoughts about the weekend's action. There's 6 games we're going to look at in depth, but do get in with your comments as well. We're live for the next sort of 20 or so minutes. But let's get straight into the Championship action first of all. And we'll start with Coventry City's fine 3-0 win over Peterborough United on Friday night. Coventry continuing to do well in the Championship. A rare goal for Gus Hamer and 2 less rare goals for Victor Gyökeres. His great form continues. It's now 7 in 9 games for the Swede. Ben, let's come to you first of all. And just the opening question has to be, do you think the Sky Blues now have to be considered genuine playoff contenders? And, you know, looking at the table at the moment, even sort of automatic promotion contenders right now?
Yeah, I mean, it's still early days, but I think after around 10 or so games, it's kind of like a fair reflection of where you want to be. I think after this midweek, we'll see where they're really at. I know they've not really faced any of the so-called big hitters in the league yet, your Fulhams, your West Broms and that like, but the way they put away Peterborough just come off the back of a good win against Birmingham at home, it was pretty impressive in the fact they scored all those goals in the space of around, I think it was 7 second half minutes. It just showed they've got a new clinical side to them now. I think last season it was all about consolidating in the Championship. They were the only one of the 3 promoted teams to stay up, and they've clearly added to that squad very well. And something just seems to be clicking for it at the minute. Mark Robins is getting the best out of what's a pretty inexperienced Championship squad for the most part, and they just seem to be flourishing at the minute.
It's certainly been impressive. Marcus, what have you made of Coventry? What did you make of the performance against Peterborough? As Ben says, it was 3 sort of quick-fire goals really that took the game away from the Posh.
Yeah, it was a professional job. Obviously, I think we came into the game wondering whether Posh were going to be able to back up that resounding win over Birmingham last week. But Coventry's home form has been outstanding so far this season. Obviously, Victor Gyökeres takes the headlines, but I think there's plenty of other valuable contributors. Gus Hamer, obviously, as you mentioned, getting the opener, has been a player maybe performing under the radar, hasn't took the headlines like he did last season. Now in his second season in English football, is a really valuable midfielder for Mark Robins to have in the Championship. And going forward, they look frightening. Just one thing I jotted down before this was they've actually underperformed their expected goals by quite a considerable margin this season. Now, we look at their attacking contingent and how well they're doing in the league. You'd maybe suggest they're overperforming, but the numbers say that they're not, which is maybe the scary thing when you're thinking about whether they can sustain this run towards the top end of the Championship. So yeah, hugely exciting performance from Coventry. They're so clinical at home. What got to be one of the toughest away days in the Championship at the moment. So yeah, hugely exciting start for their supporters. It's a great feeling back at the CBS Arena.
Yeah, it's certainly good to see as well. Obviously, in the previous years where Coventry have been and the way they continue to sort of rise up the Football League, it's really good to see. Vinny Furlong is clearly enjoying what he's seeing play up the Sky Blues, he says on YouTube. Just before we move away from Coventry, Ben, I just want to touch on the 2 fullbacks, so Ian Martson and Todd Kane, 2 arrivals in the summer window, both getting themselves on the assist sheet, if you want to call it that. How impressed were you with them, and also how important do you think they're going to be for someone like Victor Gyökeres, who obviously needs that kind of service from out wide?
Yeah, well, the fact they don't play wingers, I think the wing backs, they're starting to become a bit more of an important role in the Championship. A lot of teams are playing with like a 5-3-2 or a 5-4 or 5-2-3, sorry, in the division now. And I think Kane's one that obviously throws out a bit at QPR after comments he made, I think, about Osman Kaká, his teammate. He's always had talent. He was at Chelsea for a long time and he's had a lot of loan spells in the Football League. I think just needs his age, and I think he's like late 20s now. He just needs to settle down with the club, and I think he can do that at Coventry, even though they've got already a very good wing back in Fankasi Dabo, who I think could play a bit more centrally as well. I think he's played on the right side of a back three as well, so they've got options on both sides. I think Maatsen in particular, he was one who was pretty impressive for Charlton last season when he played. He was very versatile. He played left wing back. He could play on the wing, and I think him and Jake Clark-Salter getting them both in from Chelsea, I think that's pretty good coup for Coventry. It adds to what's a pretty young squad, but the whole squad as a whole, they've got quite good potential. And Maatsen and Kane in particular going forward, giving Gyökeres that service. And I think Gyökeres has been a good striker. It's obviously Brighton took him from Malmo, I think it was, and just didn't get first team football. He scored a few times last season. When he came to Coventry in the second half of the season, he's flourishing now. He's got that permanent contract, and I think it's 7 goals in 9 games, I think you said. So he's definitely thriving off that service he's getting out wide, and there's no reason why they shouldn't stick with that system, because it seems to suit the whole team.
Yeah, it's certainly looking good for Coventry, sitting third now in the Championship table. As for Peterborough, on the back of that defeat, they're currently 21st in the second tier. Let's move away from that game. Let's talk Blackburn's emphatic win over Cardiff City. Emphatic is probably the right word for it. At 5-1 it was to Rovers at Ewood Park. Sam Gallagher and Therese Dolan getting on the score sheet, but obviously Ben Brereton Diaz getting the headlines with a hat-trick. Marcus, let's come to you. I think over the summer there was obviously concern naturally amongst Rovers fans that, how were they going to sort of replace the goals and attacking threat that they potentially lost with the likes of Adam Armstrong leaving, and obviously Harvey Elliott going back to Liverpool after his loan spell come to an end. But to me, it looks like Rovers have really started to find a bit more attacking rhythm, and obviously 5 goals would support that, I think it's fair to say.
Yeah, the newly found confidence in Ben Brereton Diaz is one of the stories of the season so far. He's come back a completely different player after playing in the Copa America. Tony Mowbray was definitely saying along those lines at the end of the game that, yeah, he just can't believe that the confidence he's come back, and it's been able to breathe it through the rest of the squad. I think a player like Sam Gallagher has definitely felt that he needs to take a little bit more responsibility after the departure from Adam Armstrong. So that the maybe lack of a replacement, as you could call it, has seen players really take their opportunity to step into the void. Tyrese Dolan is a really exciting talent, a highlight reel skills player at times at Ewood Park, and obviously they look very good, particularly when they're playing at home. So yeah, that front three could be one of the most feared in the division if they can keep up this form. And I think it has to be said that Cardiff did help them out quite considerably in this match. Some of the goals were calamitous defending, really. But you have to credit Rovers for taking advantage. And Brereton Diaz, Gallagher and Dolan, I'm sure plenty of managers will be scratching their heads up and down the Championship of how they're going to contend with their threat as the season progresses.
Certainly think that's fair to say. Ben, let's touch on Cardiff as well. Obviously a heavy defeat. It's their 3rd loss straight in the league. It's their 4th loss in 5. You probably don't want to talk too much as a Preston fan about a really impressive Blackburn win, but as Marcus says, Cardiff did kind of help them along in many ways, and Mick McCarthy is starting to come under a little bit of pressure from certain sections of support. If you look at social media and that kind of thing, obviously that can be a bit of an echo chamber at times. What did you make of Cardiff's performance, and what have you made of their sort of tail off in form in recent weeks?
Well, I think I said in the last week of the window, I didn't think they'd added enough perhaps going forward. Obviously, they signed Collins from Luton, and with McCarthy only playing one striker, he's never really gonna start him and Moore both up front. And I think the attacking midfield positions was one that I was worried about. And with Bakuna playing a lot, he's not very well received by Cardiff fans in that area of the pitch. And I didn't expect him to have defensive trouble. So considering they have 3 for the Championship level, very solid centre backs, but just seems like Blackburn really picked them apart. Looking at the goals, it just looked like very, very sloppy defending for a lot of them. There might have been a little bit of good fortune about some of them. I know Brereton, for 2 of his goals, he shinned one of them in, and one of them got hit against his own leg. But you've got to get in those positions to get them goals, and Blackburn were clinical, but it's just something you don't really expect from a McCarthy team to leak all those goals. So it's kind of a little bit worrying that the results have been pretty poor recently. Three defeats on the bounce. They're going to need to have a reaction quicker, else they'll just keep dropping down the table. I'm just very worried about their squad depth across the pitch, and particularly at the top end of the pitch. And I think a lot of people were saying Cardiff maybe playoff contenders just on the strength of, McCarthy was pretty solid when he came in last season, but from what I've seen in the last few games, I think they might be in a struggle. Not what say the perhaps relegation contenders on the strength of these recent performances, but I don't see them being playoff contenders. I know it's early days, but it's looking a little bit worrying right now.
Certainly is. Certainly a bit of work to do for Mick McCarthy, but I'm sure he'll feel as though he's up to the task. Those results leave Cardiff sitting in 13th and Blackburn currently occupying the final playoff place, 6th in the Championship table. One more second-tier game to take a look at from the weekend, and that's Reading's win over Middlesbrough. 1-0 victory for the Royals, building on their good win at Craven Cottage last time out. I was actually at the Fulham Reading game. I was impressed particularly with their attacking combinations, the likes of Ovia Jaria, Alan Halilovic and John Swift, all causing Fulham plenty of issues, and it was the latter pair who combined to get Reading's sole goal at the weekend against Middlesbrough. Halilovic getting the strike, his first goal of the season in the Championship. He's got 2 assists as well so far. Marcus, how impressed have you been with Halilovic? We obviously saw him at Birmingham, but I think it might be fair to say we're perhaps seeing the best of him, at the select Carl Eason Stadium at the moment.
Yeah, he's picked up, definitely. I think when he came in from Birmingham, it was a tricky sort of acclimatisation into English football. I didn't have that too high expectations of him this season, nor did I maybe expect him to be playing as regularly as he is at the start of the season. Reading having some impressive attacking players, as you've already mentioned. To score his first goal, I'm sure will be a huge boost, obviously, in the league this season, and maybe a bit of a boost in the way that he went in, the way that the goal went in, a little bit fortunate. Sort of, I think he's kicked it against his other foot, and it's wrong-footed Joe Lumley, but, I'm sure he'll take it as chipped in with 2 assists already in the league as well. So really a player that Veljko Paunovic needed to step up because, of course, Reading with the pending points deduction off the pitch, they're going to need to be picking up points, and they're going to need to get the best out of everyone in their squad if they are going to want to maybe compete for a mid-table finish and not to have any relegation anxieties going into the backstretch, of course, because they are going to be a disadvantage to the rest of the clubs in the leagues, apart from Derby. So yeah, it's really impressive. John Swift was instrumental in this match once again, clearly making up for lost time after a couple of injuries sort of hampering his last 2 campaigns. So yeah, Reading looking good, as you mentioned, particularly going forward. But yeah, a very pleasing clean sheet, I'm sure, to go alongside that win as well for Paunovic. So yeah, they're on an upward trajectory at the moment.
Certainly are. I mean, it's a good point you make as well, Marcus. Obviously, they do have that points deduction looming. Currently sitting 9th, 3 wins on the spin, 13 points. So they're doing their very best to try and get as much space as they can from the drop zone before obviously potentially dropping back towards it. Ben, let's just talk Middlesbrough as well. It's a little bit of a tough patch that they're going through at the moment. 3 losses in 4. Neil Warnock, obviously, he's seen it all before. I guess there's probably some supporters that are thinking, is he going to be, the right man to win them promotion? Just based on the lack of form they've shown recently. But it's probably fair to say it's given his track record, it's probably not time to panic just yet. Would you say?
Probably not time to panic now, but the results aren't exactly positive. I think they've not won since the middle of August, and I'm not entirely sure how many of the late window signings were his idea. I know they brought in a new recruitment guy from Norwich at the end of August, and I just get the feeling if the results keep on going downwards, then perhaps they might transfer to the younger head coach kind of model with the director of football that is Kieran Scott from Norwich, who's come in, could kind of transform into that role. I think it could be Warnock's last season in management anyway. I know there's talk of him perhaps retiring at the end of his contract at the end of the season. Whether he'll see that out remains to be seen. But I do think that this squad might need time to click. Obviously, they brought in Hernandez, Salik, and Sporer in the final few days, and they've all got a lot of talent. The latter two in particular have shown it across Europe, in France and in Portugal and other leagues. And Borough's squad does have a little bit of depth, and they've got some exciting players just not really showing it at the minute. I think he was dealt a bad hand right at the end of the game with that red card. I don't think anything would have changed in the result, perhaps, but it definitely was a red card. And I think Warnock's already said today that the referee's admitted apparently that he's got that one wrong. If he'd kept 11 players on the pitch for the last 5-10 minutes, would he have got a point? Who knows? Can't go back and change that now, but it's definitely a little bit of a worrying sign, the results recently. But it's very early days, won't be panicking just yet. If it's in around 5 or 6 games' time, if there's still no win, then it might be time to panic a little bit more then, though.
We'll see what happens. But yeah, as you say, Matt Crooks, that red card was pretty harsh. I think it's fair to say Warnock has also said that Borough intend to appeal that. So you would imagine they could well be successful with that particular one. That result leaves Middlesbrough 18th in the table, and as mentioned earlier on, Reading sit in 9th. Right, let's move away from the Championship. Let's talk League One. And we'll start with the game at the Valley between Charlton and Portsmouth, two teams that at the start of the season would have been hoping to challenge at the right end of the table, but currently struggling to really put a string of form together to get themselves in that picture. Charlton particularly suffering with that at the moment, but they did manage to salvage a late draw. Ronan Curtis and Marcus Harness twice put Portsmouth in front of the Valley. Goals from Sean Clare and Josh Davison late on pegged them back to at least save Adkins' blushes a little bit, although I think it was quite telling on Twitter that Thomas Sandgaard, the Charlton owner, tweeted out that Charlton need results, and I think that's a bit of an indicator that potentially Adkins is coming under pressure, not just from supporters, but from the man in charge at the Valley. Marcus, obviously a Charlton fan, what did you make of, I guess, A, the performance, but B, more what Sandgaard had to say on social media after the result?
Well, firstly, with Sandgaard, I think it's stating the blatantly obvious. Charlton in 22nd place in League One, quote, need to get results. Yep. I'm not really sure what else you can take from that. Yeah. It's not really an acceptable position. One win, 3 draws, 5 losses from the opening 9 games is clearly not up to the standard from where Charlton have aspirations to be this season. In terms of the performance, I think in terms of the game as a whole, maybe to start with, it definitely lived up to its billing. A 2-2 end-to-end game, plenty of chances for both teams. The whole attacking trio of Marcus, Harness and Curtis probably should have got on the score sheet. Marcus had plenty of good chances. Got a really nice assist for Marcus Harness for the second goal. You could give Adkins credit. I think Charlton coming back from behind twice. His substitutions, Sean Clare got a goal. Corey Brackett-Taylor got an assist, and Josh Davison, of course, with the other goal. Great to see the youngster get on the score sheet. Such an infectious talent. He works so hard. So to get in at the back post with a 88th minute equaliser was quite pleasing. I think the proof will be in the pudding on Tuesday night, whether Charlton can really build on this. Despite in patches it being reminiscent of some other poor performances that have led to defeats this season, of course, there have to be some positives to take. Portsmouth is, despite their league position, still a tricky game in League One, and to come away with a point considering the recent form has to be classed as a decent result, I think. 2 games unbeaten, maybe the biggest stretch of the season, I think, at the top of my head. But yeah, Bolton on Tuesday night will be the proof will be in the pudding. I think we'll see where Nigel Adkins is tomorrow evening. But yeah, a positive performance overall, still showing in flashes rather than putting together a complete performance. But yeah, obviously he's got a great squad at his disposal, and being able to call on the likes of the trio that I mentioned coming from the bench is going to help him, and speaks to sort of how unrealistic and below par it is to have a squad of that calibre flirting around in the League One relegation zone.
Certainly work to do still for Nigel Adkins at Valley. As you mentioned, the Marcus Charles sit 22nd in the League One table. Portsmouth sitting in 10th, still looking for that elusive win. They haven't won in the league since the middle of August. I think potentially, conceding late like that, a little bit indicative as well of their current struggles to see things over the line. One more League One game to look back on, and that's Sunderland's win against Bolton at the Stadium of Light. Ben, Carl Winchester, the goal scorer. He's got a happy habit again in the box from his more sort of defensive position. Sunderland now joint top, only behind Wigan on goal difference. I guess the question for me is, does this result show why Sunderland are probably going to be there or thereabouts in the top two, and Bolton potentially are more playoff contenders and nothing more this year in League One?
I don't really think it's just this result in particular that showing why Sunderland are up there. It's just what they've done in all competitions, really. I think they've only lost once, and that was a 1-0 loss to Burton Albion. And even in the Carabao Cup, they're showing that they've got a lot of squad depth that they can. There's giving Lee Johnson probably a bit of a selection headache. They've got depth in all positions across the pitch, and if he wanted, he could probably change his whole 11 and probably have one of the better squads in League One. They're not really blowing teams away in the league. There's been a lot of narrow 1-goal wins, just like on Saturday against Bolton. And like I said, Winchester's a player that he's taken his chance playing at right back. Luke O'Neill played there quite a little bit last season, but with his new contract, I think he's been guaranteed a role in the centre midfield, and that's shifted Winchester back into a position where he's played a little bit earlier in his career, but he transformed into more of a natural central midfielder for the likes of Oldham and Forest Green. And the way that Johnson wants to play, though, he likes his full-backs to bomb on and get into the box, and they're showing that here. Dennis Sirkin got the assist at left back, and Winchester came in late at the back post, and it's just showing how Johnson wants his team to play. And he's got competition at right back now with Niall Huggins from Leeds. I think they're very different players in the sense that Winchester's he's a tough tackling, energetic midfield, and Huggins is a more attacking kind of wing back player, but I don't think he can lose his place in the team right now. He's clearly contributing a lot with goals and solidity at the back. But yeah, I think a lot of people expected Sunderland I think they had a little bit of a high turnover of players going out in the summer, perhaps players that not so much let them down, but weren't of the required quality to get them to where they want to be, which is the Championship, and then perhaps back to the Premier League. From what I've seen so far, it's been all positive, and can't really see him dropping too many points from the way they've been playing.
Okay, yeah, no, Sunderland looking very good at the moment in League One, currently sitting second, as I mentioned, only behind Wigan on goal difference in the third tier. Bolton, after that defeat, sit in ninth. Before we go, one League Two game to look back on, and that's Bristol Rovers' win at Warsaw. And it was a very, very overdue away victory for the Gas, I think it's fair to say. Their first away win in 2021 as we enter the last 3 months of the year nearly. A big result as well against the Walsall team, obviously close to the league table. That scoreline leaves Walsall 22nd and Rovers in 18th. Ben, I think it's probably fair to say that, looking at the two teams sort of on paper and what you would hope for them for this year, Rovers are probably more likely to kick on and get away from the bottom two, whereas Walsall, although they've showed a little bit more fight in recent weeks under Matt Taylor, it's quite likely they're going to be towards the bottom of the league for the whole of this season, really.
Yeah, I think it's a tough one for Taylor with his first senior job. I thought he recruited some pretty decent players for League Two standard this summer, but obviously they're underperforming a little bit. He might get a little bit of leeway as it's his first job, but obviously some chairman will want to change it quickly. The results aren't going the way, and get an experienced manager who knows the league if they continue to struggle. But I think on paper you've got to say Bristol Rovers squad's probably man for man one of the better ones in the division, and I don't know what's not clicked there so far. I know Joey Barton's had a bit of a stick in the last few weeks. I think it was last Saturday where the home fans weren't particularly happy with him and they were calling to get out. But I think this win, late one, obviously, I think Sion Spence scored in stoppage time in the second half. I think it will calm the fears down of them struggling a little bit. And I think the cookie come from this, they've got, especially up front, the likes of Brett Pittman, Aaron Collins, Leon Clark as well, who's been around the leagues for a long time. They've got a lot of scoring options up front if they're all firing. I think this result will have brought in a bit of a reprieve from all concerned at Bristol Rovers, and it wouldn't surprise me now to see him go on a bit of a run of good results.
Yeah, you can never be surprised now. Rovers have finally broken that away duck, that they can get on a little bit of run, and obviously form at home they can try and use that as well to get themselves up the table. But as mentioned, tough times for Warsaw, currently sitting 22nd in the League Two table. Okay, that brings an end to the weekend review for this week on Football League World TV. Coming up later on the channel, 2 p.m, a Hull City fan takeover. Alfie Burns will be hosting that one. And then at 4 o'clock, we've got a Nottingham Forest fan takeover with George Harvey, I'm sure, looking back at Steve Cooper's first game in charge at the City Ground of the Reds. But from us, that's all. Ben, Marcus, thank you very much for joining me this morning. Do subscribe to us on our YouTube channel. It'd be greatly appreciated. Also on Facebook and Twitter, where you can find us. Give us a like and a follow if you can. That would be very much appreciated. But from us here, we'll speak to you very soon.